Okay. Hey, hello and welcome to today's session on remote or distributed locking. Okay, so in order to understand remote or distributed locking, first we need to understand locking in a single application. Okay, in a single application. Let's say there's this microservice, okay, or an application, okay, and there are multiple threads here, okay, in this particular service, okay, and there's a critical section, okay, there's this critical section, okay, and what you want is at a given time, only one thread should access this particular critical section. Now, this critical section can be the data which you want to protect or a particular task you want that only one thread at a given time, only one thread should execute the task, right? So, so this is this critical section. Okay. So in order for one thread, only one thread to access this particular critical section, we have various synchronization techniques, right? Like synchronization blocks, methods, or semaphores, mutexes, reentrant locks, and all. Okay. So we know this particular right, like in a multi-threaded application we have seen this like a lot of times, right? A lot of times. But what if there are multiple applications, okay, like there are multiple instances of the same microservice, okay. Now you want that there's this particular task, okay, and and at any given amount of time, only one instance of the application should execute that task. Okay, should execute the task. For example, now there's this scheduler. Okay, there's a scheduler which is a client. Okay, so you have scheduled some task, right? Let's say at 4 p.m. you have scheduled a task. So what it is going to do? Let's say it is going to send a notification. Now somehow this notification is received by all the applications. But what you want is, it's just a very rough example. Okay, it's just a very rough example. Okay, so what you want is, now all the three applications are getting the notification, but you want that only one application should perform the task, not all the three applications. Okay, not all the three. So in this case, what are you going to do? In this case, we have an option of what we say remote locking. So what we can do is, let's say, now remote locking, how that is implemented. So first, let's say, now what we can do is these three applications. Okay, this is some lock app, we can say. Okay, we'll see what is this lock app exactly. Okay, so now there are these three applications. So all these three applications will try to race, right? Will try to race for the lock. Okay, and out of these three applications, only one application is going to get the lock. Okay, okay, only one application is going to win. Okay, and is going to perform the particular task. Okay, now how this lock app or how this remote locking is implemented? So this is nothing but we can implement this remote locking using Redis. Okay, a single node Redis. Okay, a single Redis node. Through using single Redis node, we can perform, or we can remote lock basically. So as I said, you get there are multiple instances of the same service. Okay, so so all the instances are receiving the notification, and only one application need to execute the task. So in that case, what we can do is, this is just an example, as I said previously. So all the three applications can go for getting the lock. Okay, as I said, only one application is going to get the lock. Okay, rest applications, they won't get the lock, and the application which got the lock is going to perform the task. Okay, so this is done using Redis basically. That's a very standard, like a lot of companies use this particular locking feature from Redis. Okay, so generally there's a set nx function, okay, which is used in Redis, okay, to apply the lock. Okay, so this is remote locking. Okay, now I have written a code. Okay, I've written a code, okay, wherein to demonstrate this remote locking. So what I've done here is, um, so I've just exposed an API, okay, for remote locking. Okay, I've just exposed an API, and what this API does is, this tries to get the lock from Redis. Okay, so here it is trying the lock. Okay, it is trying the lock, and if it gets a lock, okay, is locked will be true, and the application can then perform whatever task it wants to perform. Else, if it does not get the lock, then it is going to do nothing. It is just going to return. Okay, it's a very simple code I've written. Okay, I hope you've got what the code is doing. Okay, now what I've done is I have deployed two two instances of the same application. So if you see here, so the application is running, the two applications are running on 8081 and 8082 port. Okay. Okay. So let me run these two applications. Now what I'm going to do is, I think the services are started. Oh, there's some, let me check. Okay. So the Redis was not running. So I'm running the Redis on Docker. So let me run this. Okay. It's running now. Okay. So now let me restart the services again. Okay. So app one is up and running. Let's wait for app two. App two is also up and running. So there are two instances of the same application. Okay, running. Now what we are going to do is we are going to simulate this remote locking. So now we are going to send the notification to the two applications, right? To the two instances basically. Okay, send the notification. We are just going to call a REST API. Okay, and we will see that only one of them will be able to acquire the lock. Okay, so let me run this. Okay, let me execute the first API and also at the same time the second API. So if you see, oh, so the first one had got the lock. Okay, the second one, I mean, let me re-execute again. Let me re-execute again. Okay. So if you see when we executed the second REST API, so could not acquire lock. Okay. Because the lock was acquired by the first application. Okay. If you see task completed with lock. Okay. So here let's quickly walk through the code. Okay. So what we are doing here is we are trying the lock. Okay. And this is saying zero means give the lock immediately. Okay. Okay. And this lock will be held for 10 seconds. Why 10 seconds? Because for example, if the application dies and if we have not set the TTL, basically this is the TTL, right? Then the lock will be like the lock is not going to be available for others, right? So that is why even if the application goes down, so we have a TTL of 10 seconds here. So, okay. So after 10 seconds, the lock will be unlocked for others to acquire the lock. Okay. I hope you've got this. And behind the scenes, this is just wrapper. Behind the scene, setNX function is called. Okay. So yeah, so this is, we have just seen, what we have seen is we sent the notification to the two instances of the same application and one of them was able to acquire the lock. Okay. Okay. So this was the demo of remote locking. Okay. Now what we're going to see, we're going to see distributed locking. Okay. Now let's say this remote locking, we implemented this using a single Redis node. But what if this node goes down? So this is a single point of failure, right? So what we need to do is, so this becomes a segue for distributed locking. Okay. So let's say, so in order, okay, to not to have single point of failure, we'll have, let's say, we can implement the locking mechanism using the Redis cluster itself. So let's say there are 5 Redis nodes in one cluster. Okay. And there are 3 applications. Okay. There are 3 applications. Let's say application 1, 2, 3. So what we can do is, so the three applications are trying to acquire the lock. Okay, so for example, this one acquired the lock on this particular Redis node. Okay, the second application acquired the lock on the second node, right? The second application was able to acquire the lock on third node as well. Then there was the third application which was able to acquire the lock on this particular node, right? And then again, the first application was able to acquire the lock on this particular node. So if you see, so the second application has acquired the locks on two nodes, right? The first application has acquired the locks on two nodes, and the third application has acquired the lock on one node only. Okay. So what we can do here is, so when we have a Redis cluster, when we have multiple nodes, then we can implement the locking using the quorum mechanism. Now, what is a quorum? For example, let's say quorum is nothing but number of Redis nodes, right? Number of Redis nodes divided by 2. Okay. So whichever application, so for example, let's say like how many Redis nodes are there? There are 5 nodes, right? Divided by 2, which gives us 2.5. So we are going to take the seal of this. Okay. We are going to take the seal of this. Okay. So it is going to be what? It is going to be 3. So whichever application instance acquires a lock on 3 Redis nodes will get the lock. Okay. Will get the lock. Okay. Rest the applications, I mean, they won't get the locks. So for example, so again, let me draw here. So this time there are 5 Redis nodes again. Okay. There are 5 Redis nodes again. And let's say second application was able to acquire the lock on this particular Redis node. The second application was again able to acquire the lock on this particular Redis node. Then there was this third application which acquired the lock on this node. The first application was able to acquire the lock on this node, and this last node, right? The second application was able to acquire the lock on the last node. So if you see, 2 has able to acquire the lock on 3 nodes, right? Third application has able to acquire on 1 node, and first application on 1 node. Okay, so 2 clearly wins here. It also satisfies the quorum condition, right? Quorum is what? Like number of total nodes divided by 2 generally. So number of acquired locks, right? Acquired locks, if it is greater than quorum, then whichever application it is going to win. So 2 gets a lock this time. So application number 2 gets a lock and it can perform the transaction. Okay, or it can perform the task basically. Okay. So I hope you have got distributed locking and remote locking as well. For distributed locking, we are not going to demo. Okay. So like it is just the extension of what we have seen for remote locking. Okay. And hence we are not going to demo. So I hope you've got this, this concept of remote and distributed locking. Okay. So thanks for watching. I wish you a great day. Thank you so much. Bye.